afternoon, good evening. Welcome into the rotation with Patrick Ryder and Brian Jones. I'm Brian Jones. Patrick, how you doing tonight?
I'm Patrick Ryder, still here, and Brian, I'm in a good mood. There's a lot of positive momentum with this being the Easter season. It's a bit of a rebirth, and we've kind of banged on some folks for the last couple of weeks, and we're back to it. We've got a great guest for everybody today, and some really positive momentum coming into the spring. So, I'm happy.
I'll tell you what I'm feeling positive about is the number of states that are going to be moving forward with some sort of vote here in 2022. 9 states in total that I count, 3 medical, including North Carolina. That's 2 thumbs up. North Carolina, South Carolina, Kansas on the medical side. Recreational, we got Rhode Island, Delaware, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and Maryland. So that's what I'm happy about. I think you could throw Ohio in there too. They have until the middle of the year to determine if they're going to throw their hat in the ring on rec as well.
Yeah, that's a mixed bag for me, Brian. If North Carolina comes online, does that mean that you're going to stop visiting?
Oh, what are you talking about, Patrick? Of course I'll visit. I come there for work. So I don't know what you're trying to imply.
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't even throw in. No, I'm just kidding. I even threw in Kentucky. I think Kentucky they've been back and forth. I think they put it down, but we'll see. But yeah, we've been bagging on senators and representatives. Let's get back to having some fun and meeting people. So our 2-week hiatus is over. I'll let you talk about our guest.
Before we talk about our guest again, and we're probably hit on this in the next couple of weeks. New York and New Jersey actually have a plan to move forward. I got on my Jetty shirt. Big ups to LBI in New Jersey. They're coming online and opening up next Thursday. So
didn't they open up some already this week?
You would know better than I would. I've been kind of following we've got all adults will be able to purchase cannabis at certain medical marijuana facilities starting on April 21st.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that's the vernal equinox, right? It's actually, one of those important days, the 21st. So, but I'm probably wrong. It's geography. It's the times of year. So, but my folks in New Jersey, I got a lot of family back there. I'm excited that they're going to be able to experience kind of the excitement and the energy that comes with the allowance of cannabis. But first things first, you get cannabis legalized, and then people start making drinks out of it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be talking about today is kind of that evolution of what the next phase is away from alcohol. We've seen companies buy Sweetwater. We've seen people buy whiskey distilleries in Colorado. And we've got a young lady named Rachel from Wynk, who is in the process of kind of rolling out a cannabis beverage. And it's kind of like a slow flow, right? It's a slow release valve that's much like drinking beer, just the side effects are what you would get from cannabis. I think it's is it 2.5, Brian? 0.25?
Yeah. I'm excited to, when I go to a party now, I'm drinking club soda, right? Because I just don't feel like pounding drinks. This would change the game. 2 milligrams of cannabis, of THC, 2 to 2.5. You can have 3 to 4 and get the same. Well, if you can get 4 of them, you get the same as like the standard 10 milligram gummy that you get in Colorado. So I think it's a change of what we're going to see in the future. So I think Rachel is going to, drop some knowledge on her history and drop some knowledge on where she's going and what she's done and where she's going.
We guys hope you enjoy it as we welcome Rachel into the rotation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might find us. Welcome into the rotation. I am your co-host, Patrick Ryder, along with Brian Jones. Brian, are you in North Carolina today?
Yes.
All right. And it is opening day as we record this. So here in Denver, Colorado, that is somewhat of a holiday. And we are very lucky.
It's the one day everybody goes to a Rockies game every year.
That's not true. We sell out on a regular basis, just no one watches the games. And here we go. So today we've got Rachel Leonard. And we're really excited about this because this is our first real products episode where we're going to dive into, the state of the industry as it relates to cannabis infused beverages. And Rachel joins us from, you're here in Denver, correct, Rachel?
I am.
Today, we also just learned that she's going to be going somewhere else for the entire summer. So summer break. We just got back from summer break, and Rachel is on her way out, but she is with Wynk. And we like to start off a little bit of this with kind of getting into everyone's journey into cannabis. As some of you know, that Brian and I have vastly different origins into our personal journeys. And Rachel, we'd love to hear yours.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that working in injection molding for my father really wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I had put my resume up on Angel List and had been contacted by a company called Baker Technologies at the time. And I think that was about 7 years ago at this point. Ended up starting with Baker. It was a customer retention platform. After a year of that, I think I was, I came to myself and I was like, all right, I know I've always been wanting to be in cannabis, but do I really want to be on the tech side? And so then I had a short stint at Silver Peak Apothecary where I was selling on the front lines. But really where I think my career began was the PAX role. And started back with them and was there for about 4 to 5 years. And I really, like I said, think that's where my career began. I got a lot of opportunities to work nationally, meet a ton of really great people within the markets. And then, the position at Wynk kind of presented itself. So started with Wynk, and it's been 9 weeks and I've been on the road every single week.
Oh, so you came into Wynk just kind of, I don't want to say post-pandemic because some of the news today and this week has made it perfectly clear that COVID has not completely left us, but kind of towards the end of really the Fear Factory part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting selling during the time of COVID where, you couldn't be in the stores. And so that was when I was at PAX, and we started to get really scrappy in the way that we approached it. We wanted to make sure that we were appearing on everyone's individual menus appropriately, like with our own brand imaging. We were incentivizing people through phone calls. We even made a puzzle at the time because everyone was bored at home. So okay. We got really creative in our approach to really drive sales within the dispensaries.
Rachel, you said your career started at Baker, and I would argue that your career started back in high school. So you told us a great story about spring break senior year. I think we want to highlight that because of some other stories we heard. Why don't you go through that, if you don't mind, if you're okay with that?
No, but I will say that I was of age, 18 at the time. So it was senior week.
There you go.
And
perfect.
My girlfriends and I each brought an ounce down to South Carolina, which anyone who knows about the South, they have zero appetite for cannabis. And so I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, got busted with some weed, and thankfully, I got out pretty okay on it. It was expunged at the end of the day, but I think where you're going with this is the conversation that I had with my dad.
Yeah.
And he's a really conservative guy, but he's now proud that I'm his daughter that works in weed. Mm-hmm. But the question that he asked me when I got home from, getting arrested and all that good stuff, he said, do you know anyone who smokes weed that is successful? And, I said, Snoop Dogg. And my dad just looked at me like, fuck, she's right. But can I say fuck?
It's fine. You're good.
It's fine.
Okay. And so he knew I was right, but he was trying to make the point that he thought people who smoked weed were lazy. And I really have enjoyed the journey, with my parents getting into cannabis as well. So I finally got both of my parents to try and consuming. My mom first started on the vape side when I was working at PAX. And then most recently I got my dad to try gummies, and he laughed like a little schoolgirl. So it's, you can still be successful, smoke weed, and get shit done.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal story because we're talking, if anybody listened to the first episode, I berated a friend because they brought it, but it's part of the journey, right? It was created with such a stigma to it. that everybody was convinced that, oh, potheads don't do anything. And then of course, every movie, if anybody ever watched Dazed and Confused, like you had the jocks and you
Yeah.
had the potheads, right? But then you had Randall Pink Floyd, who's the starting quarterback, and he's like, I like smoking weed, hanging out with these guys. I can also hang with these guys and be a kick-ass quarterback. So I think it's great that you did that with your father. I would, don't know if she wants me to out her on here, but I think there's family members of mine, my mother, like if I won't say too much, but if there's a gummy and she needs to sleep, that's what she does. So it's fun to watch these old conservative viewpoints kind of come around. So we want to get into the drink part of this. You talked about it's going to take a while, right? It's going to take a while to kind of battle the alcohol industry. Another gentleman we had on here thinks that cannabis one day kind of take over the alcohol industry. You brought up some good points about what the struggles will be, and I kind of want you to dive into that since you're on the front lines. What are you seeing out there with these low THC drinks?
Yeah, I think microdosing is certainly a way of the future. I think 1906 is a fabulous company that has kind of pioneered that, nationally. But the challenges that we have are simple. We've taught all of these consumers that they can only consume a small portion of, an edible. So, for instance, you have an entire chocolate bar, but you can only break off one square. It's like, where's the indulgence in that? I like to indulge. I typically will have the munchies, so I want to have more. But also, where I'm going with that is that Wynk, with the company I'm at now, we have a THC and CBD seltzer. And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, you can be social and also have cannabis, because there's studies showing that you're more approachable as a person with something like a drink in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's interesting. Where's that kind of research coming from? Because I mean, I agree,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah.
I've never heard that before, actually.
I would need to go back and look for that
Okay.
study. It was I did read it somewhere that you are more approachable with a drink in hand. So really the problem is that, when you go into the store and you talk to some of these bud tenders, they don't understand the importance of 2.5 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
And so really changing that the conversation and also the consumer behavior simultaneously. So I usually lean into, do you like to have a drink or do you like to have drinks or beer or beers? And I think that starts to really resonate with them, that it is a buildable and sessionable high. Because I know for myself, I can consume about 10 milligrams. So over the course of 90 minutes, I can have 4 of these drinks if I wanted to and reach that peak of a high.
Yeah. One thing you say about the drink is if I go to a cocktail party,
yeah,
if I don't have a drink in my hand, or if I have water in my hand, you get shit. You get made fun out of. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
you teetotaling it? Like, it's such a, peer pressure motivated thing. So like if you're sitting there and you have a glass of seltzer, which is what I usually do, is just get a club soda and, put it in a club soda and club soda, vodka soda glass, and people think I'm drinking and they don't say anything. Same thing can be done with cannabis, which I think's Wynk is on the forefront of that. There's a few others, but that 2 milligram, 2.5 milligram gives people that flexibility for sure.
And
So,
Rachel, you just mentioned, you kind of find your comfort zone at around 10 milligrams. Can you talk a little bit about how you found that? Was there a testing period? Was there a day that you went way too far? I mean, I think about, the stories that Brian's talked about where he's, quote unquote, drank his face off. And it's a little bit harder to do if you're shotgunning a THC drink, but I'm assuming that you could probably do the same thing and have some adverse results. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found your comfort zone?
Yeah, I think for myself, and there's a lot of people out there that have had the same experience of like going too big, too fast. And, one of my first edible experiences, I had gone into a dispensary still when Colorado was medical and walked in. The owner knew that I was an everyday consumer from like a smoking perspective or smokable perspective, but never an edible. And so he gave me a decadose of a Chiba Chew, which is 100 milligrams. And he said, if you take half, you'll be fine.
Oh.
And I took half and literally was on the floor. Like, it was the worst experience, and honestly felt like I was in an insane asylum. And I'm like, I don't know what that would feel like, but this feels like that.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
so it wasn't a pleasant experience. It really turned me off from edibles. And I think that I gave it a shot over time by like starting really small. Like 1906 actually pioneered the way for me for edibles, because they have that 2.5 as well as 5 milligram dosage. So allowing myself to kind of build that high that I know was obtainable for me and comfortable really brought me back into that category.
Yeah, Rachel, you're very open about your cannabis life. With all the stigma out there and with your upbringing, how do you get comfortable with that? I find that this, Patrick and I were talking the other night. When we talk on this podcast, it's almost like our therapy. We talk about it, we get it out
Mhm.
there so more people know kind of, how we feel about it. But how, you probably are one of the most comfortable people talking about it. Where'd that come from?
I mean, to
You just
my
don't
parents'
give a shit,
dismay,
maybe. Yeah.
to my parents' dismay, I've been a consumer since I was like 15 or 16.
Hmm.
For me, I found that I'm a naturally really charged person, so it was something that like brought me back to like it's almost like a leveling for me. And I do believe in the medicinal benefits that cannabis has. And there was such a stigma attached to it that I really wanted to get involved and really change that conversation around cannabis, because people have a lot of misconceptions about it. I mean, as we already talked about with my father, his tune has totally changed, that you can be successful, smoke weed, and, just
It's a balance.
being
It's like,
be a contributor to everyday life.
yeah, I mean, you can't drink a 12 pack and go to work. You just can't.
No,
So, you can't smoke down a 25% THC joint and go to work, but maybe a puff, and it kind of just, levels you out. That medicinal impact is real. And I think that's a very important thing to get across for sure.
totally. I
Um,
think that 2.5 milligram is a perfect dosage to kind of level set if you are someone, you know, that is looking for to kind of level out, right?
mhm.
Like, it's just an opportunity to carry on with your day without being overly affected. If you obviously want to get high, you have the ability to by
Mhm.
drinking multiple.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. I don't think I've said it on here, but I think the person who comes up with a pill that you can take in the morning at like 2, 3 milligrams, that'll hit you, within 5 to 10 minutes, is going to
Mhm.
be probably one of the richest people in cannabis, because it'll take a lot of people out of, hey, I'm going to hit my bowl, or I'm going to hit this, or I'm going to have that. Like, it's just another avenue of the medicine as we get more into the medicinal part of it. And I think with Bright Green's announcement, you're going to New Mexico, so they've just gone public, they've just gone recreational. Well,
Right.
that DEA permit that's coming in with Bright Green, well, what are they going to do with that? Is it going to be more medicinal? Are we going to have more pharmaceutical companies getting in this, trying to develop not just drinks, but other sort of ways for people to use it in a medicinal way? So, another thing you talked about was the Last Prisoner Project. Can you go over that?
um for me, I think that I was signaling towards like we need to do better as an industry
There
of
we go.
working towards the incarcerated for cannabis in general, and providing support to them, because at the end of the day we're all benefiting from an industry that essentially they could have probably benefited from, but they're incarcerated because of their early dealings.
Got it.
So as you mentioned earlier, you had your record expunged, and we had a conversation with somebody, a gentleman named Michael Diaz Rivera, who did not. His record has yet to be expunged. There is a significant difference between the way that you look and the way that Michael looks on on the screen, and I'd like to know a little bit about what that looked like when you were going through the process of getting arrested in Myrtle Beach, I'm assuming, because I think everyone I know has been arrested in Myrtle Beach at some point in their life.
Oh,
But
everywhere.
Yeah, right. But honestly, like Michael was in a position where he was convicted of a felony. He spent time in jail. He was a young black man in Colorado Springs. They got clipped with a quarter ounce of weed in the back of his car, and he had a felony that prohibited him from doing certain things in his life for about 10 years.
Yeah.
You're not that. So could you tell us a little bit about what that process looked like when you were arrested, and how long it took? Were you community service? Was there a prohibition? Like, probation? I'm sorry. What did that look like for you in that mindset? And were you scared to death? Because I know the one time that I got pulled over, the guy just kind of threw it out, and I shit my pants. It was frightening as hell.
Yes, I totally realized, like, I definitely had white privilege within that, and I'm the first to say that I definitely got off a lot easier than I think most people did. Yes, I was scared to death because I also had a scholarship to a university, and so the first thought in my mind was, am I going to lose my scholarship that I worked so hard to get? So I got arrested. And this is kind of where, going back to the white privilege comes in, is that my grandmother at the time lived across the street from a judge, and had a discussion with the judge. And obviously I can't even remember what the charge was at this point, but I had about a quarter of weed on me, down from the ounce originally.
It was a good week.
Yeah, it was a great week. But I ended up doing community service, worked at the local YWCA, and had to do probably about 100 hours there. In order.
Now, was that in Michigan or was that in the Carolinas that you had to perform in Ohio? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Come on, we hate the whole state of Michigan.
Yeah, you gotta remember, Patrick is a Michigan fan, Rachel. He's
Oh,
a Michigan
we're from
fan.
Ohio. Come on.
Go blue.
You both suck.
Wow. And he's from not Ohio. You're from Iowa, which
Yes.
just non-consequential in this conversation. But I digress.
Yeah, so I mean, like, had to do that community service, and then I thought all of my stuff had been expunged, but years later, when I went to go apply for Cronky, they did a background check, and they're like, hey, by the way, you had this weed charge come up. Can you give us a little bit of background, because you said that there was nothing on your record? And so I actually had to do a ton of work. Like, they had no paperwork trail that actually serviced like doing the expungement. So
that judge really did good work for you then.
Obviously all I had to do was community service, and it could have been far worse in South Carolina. So I'm really thankful, that we did have a connection to someone, and, we were able to work it out. But I do realize that, like, my experience is very different from a lot of people.
Yeah, and we're not I don't think you should feel guilty about that. I don't think anybody should. I think.
No, but I mean, like, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I know that there's plenty of people that are incarcerated for something very similar.
100%. And I think, we just had there's been a black man on the Supreme Court for years. A black woman was appointed yesterday. I think the more and more representation that community gets, the better, right? It'll create better opportunities, more equality. And, that goes from Supreme Court all the way down, through all forms. So hopefully, a guy like Michael Diaz-Rivera's neighbor will be that judge, or his grandma's neighbor will be that judge. And you can start, everybody can start getting those deals, because frankly,
hopefully we just don't have to have those types of deals because of federal legalization.
Yeah. Hey.
And I think just in general, to say, like, cannabis has a long way to go from like an inclusiveness as well. Like, how is LGBTQ plus being represented? How are, all of these different just groups of people being represented within cannabis. And
well, let's unpack that a little bit, Rachel. We had the opportunity to speak with Amy Larson from Tilt Holdings, and she's done a phenomenal job in building her career in cannabis. But through the pandemic, we've actually seen Tricia go the other direction, where women haven't been represented specifically at the executive level in cannabis companies, and that number is going way down. Have you seen those barriers yourself? What is it like to be a woman on the sales front, trying to not only work in cannabis, which is a new industry, but also try to topple, big alcohol?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tough being a woman in the industry. I'm not going to lie. There have been plenty of times where they've brought in a man to kind of manage the team, yet I was teaching them how to actually do their job. So, not to say that it has been an easy ride, it certainly hasn't, but I think like when you're passionate about what you're doing, and for me, that's changing the conversation and engaging in a product that I actually believe in, it really does make the difference of dealing with the other bullshit.
Yeah, it's still very much a boys' club. We talked to somebody else on here. It's still very much a boys' club. I think it just needs time to mature and more change. People like you leading the charge, people that have been in the industry for a while. I think it has nowhere to go but to improve, and hopefully we can lead the way. So.
No, I agree with you guys, and something that I'm specifically, kind of tying back what we were talking about prior about like incarcerations and stuff like that. Any organization that I get involved in, like I definitely want to be a part of some type of charity or cause that changes the conversation or helps someone, tackle their incarceration. So I think that, the more people that get involved in this industry, as long as they have I know everyone's getting in for profits at this point, but we need to kind of level set all of these people coming in and saying hey, it's great that you want to make money, but we also need to be doing the work in order to be standing up this industry as a whole.
Well, the good news is I believe, and I want to look it up because I want to make sure I get it right. I believe Massachusetts just passed a law about social equity cannabis bill. They just signed one, and that was today. It popped up on my thing. So I do think the promises have to be kept, right? If you're going to go out there and tout social equity, promises have to be kept. And frankly, it can't just be a figurehead. It has to be someone who has real ownership. So, I'm hopeful as we talk more about it, it'll get more out there, calling out these governments, state and federal, for their hypocrisy. They're going to have to start moving if the will of the people are moving them that way. So I'm hopeful as well.
Absolutely.
I want to ask one last question as we kind of head out of here, and that is, where can I find Wynk? Because I'm in Colorado, you're in Colorado, and it's Friday, and it's time. So where am I going? Where can I find it? Is it at every dispensary? Do you have limited distribution? Are you multi-state? Fill us in, because I'm gonna go get started.
Well, Patrick, you're gonna have to come over to get Wynk from me. Wink, wink.
No pun intended.
We're not in the state of Colorado yet. As we look at kind of Wynk's overall state expansion, we're in 8 states now. We're probably going to be in close to 16 to 20 before the end of the year. So we are ramping up pretty extensively and rapidly. So you would have to go to New Mexico as your closest local state to get Wynk right now. But as far as states that we're currently in, we are in Maine, Massachusetts, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, Arkansas, Arizona, New Mexico.
I did not hear you say Ohio, interestingly enough.
Oh, actually, we are in Ohio. We are in Ohio. I accidentally crossed over that one.
When are you getting your parents? So my last question is, when are your parents getting their cards in Ohio?
They're just like, so can you bring it home? And I'm like, you do realize that's illegal.
We won't get our card, but you just fly it home on,
Yeah, right.
Come on, sweetheart, just fly home stuff for us. Yeah, I hear that too. So awesome.
Yeah, the funny part is that my dad's like, so did Rachel leave any of those edibles here? So now he's like asking my mom on the DL for them, which is, I think, an improvement and also a win in my eyes.
Yeah, that's 100%. Great.
Well,
Rachel, this has been great. Appreciate your time. Patrick, I'll let you close it up.
Again, that's just about it. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. Let us know the second that this hits Colorado, and I will line up at my local dispensary to go find it. In the meantime, we're just going to have to, pass it to the right in the rotation. Thanks a lot, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.